Okay, welcome everybody to STEM in the Classroom webinar with the Kent ISD. I'm going to go ahead and change the screen here in just a moment, but just a couple quick items before I do that. If you look in the chat area, excuse me, down here in the chat area, we've got a couple of links that I wanted to share before we got going. The first one you'll notice is a link to the lesson plan that will be shared today. And that's the lesson plan that you'll see us kind of talking through as we move through the webinar, so you have access to that. And then there's also a link to the slides in this presentation that you'll see on your screen throughout today's webinar. So depending on your connection speed or your Wi-Fi or whatever it is you're happening to use to access this, sometimes it works better for folks if they download the slides as opposed to have them streamed in through the webinar. So if that works better for you, you can download those. Also, the third link that you'll see there is this link will take you to an online aviation education page, and it's an organization called the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and my host today is Amanda Barber, and she and I used that when we were in her classroom. So when you see that referred to, that link will take you to the appropriate portion of that web page. Also, please just introduce yourself if you've not already done so down in the chat portion of the webinar. Just your name, where and what you teach, and if you could, what brought you to today's webinar. And then I'll also mention that there will be a portion toward the end where we'll handle any questions. So as we're going through the webinar today, if you have questions or comments, things you'd like to see discussed or hear discussed with us, feel free to post those down in the bottom and we'll answer them toward the end. So with that part out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I will turn on our webcam. And there we go. So welcome to STEM in the Classroom. It's a webinar series here at the Kent ISD. My name is Abri Nkuba, and I'm here today with Amanda Barber. So Amanda, can you just tell the group a little bit about who you are?
Yes. I've worked for Kentwood Public Schools for 10 years. Currently, I am a 4th grade teacher in the Gifted and Talented program there.
Okay. Excellent. Well, welcome, and thanks for joining me today. We were just talking before we got started. The reason that we're doing these webinars at the ISD, we've been doing one of these a month throughout the school year this year, and we're hoping to be able to continue that through the end of the year. As educators, we don't often get an opportunity to compare notes, if you want to say, or see what it's like to, or see someone else's practice, someone else's classroom practice. And so when we get together, sometimes it's hard to get us quieted down and keep us from talking all the time because we want to compare notes. We want to be really great educators. So that's the point behind these webinars, is just to say, hey, we're going to peel back the curtain, and here's an example of some teaching that was going on, and what we think, what we hope, is best practice teaching, and hopefully we can all learn a little bit from that. So my name is Abri Nkuba. I'm a STEM consultant here at the ISD. Before that, I taught aircraft electronics at the Kent Career Technical Center. I still actively teach at the college level and at the high school level. I'm a flight instructor at a couple of local flight schools. I own my own drone company that's listed down there, and a lot of letters after my name there. They're all aviation-related technology industry certifications, if you want to say. So enough about us. We're going to kind of move through the webinar here. So just to give you kind of a read on what you'll see today, we're going to talk just a little bit about STEM. We hear STEM, sometimes STEAM or STEMX, or there's a lot of different acronyms out there, right? So we're going to give our definition of STEM for here at the ISD. When we talk about STEM, what do we mean? Then we're going to hear a little bit about what a business leader means when they say STEM as it relates to education. We'll see a lesson overview, like that lesson, the 2 lessons actually. We're going to share it. You get a 2 for today. You get an extra. We've got Amanda and I have worked together a couple times, so there will be a couple lessons that we'll share with you guys. And then she's going to comment on kind of the student perceptions of that lesson, how she felt it. What would you say? How your students took it, what they thought. And then it'll become the Amanda show, and she'll be talking about the student perceptions, the teacher perceptions, how this worked in your classroom, things you might do the same or different or whatever. And then we'll wrap it up. Usually this takes around 40, 45-ish minutes, so we start a little bit late just to give some more folks time to get logged on. So let's get started. All right, so what do we mean when we say STEM? So here at the ISD, myself and my other STEM consultant peer, Mr. Rick Mushing, did a lot of research, a lot of looking around, and this is what we've arrived at. The STEM education is the integration of those four disciplines: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And they're used together to solve a complex real-world problem. And by real-world, you know, we talk sometimes about the difference between application and relevance. So an example would be when I was in 7th grade, my favorite science teacher, actually, Mrs. C. If you ever see this, Mrs. C., hello, you're the reason I'm here. Taught a unit on mechanics of motion, and we built catapults. We built catapults, which is fantastic application. But that's where that unit or that lesson ended. And we would talk about, okay, so that has application, but if you drive down 28th Street or you know, places around here, that's 13th century technology. Nobody's making those today. And so we talk about, okay, so let's make it relevant to today's problems. How is the mechanics of motion used and applied in a real world, a current context? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about STEM. So I got to make a few clicks here just to change a couple things around, but I'd like to preface showing this video by saying this. So this is Mr. Hayden Land, and Hayden Land is the Vice President for Civil Engineering Systems at Lockheed Martin. So Lockheed Martin's a big military and defense contractor. Mr. Land is the Engineering Vice President on the civil side, so the non-military applications. Lockheed Martin makes a lot of great stuff, cool stuff. But forgive the quality of this video. He did a Skype call with the Kent Learning Collaborative maybe a year and a half ago, maybe more than a year and a half ago now. With the Kent Learning Collaborative, it's our curriculum directors and administrators. I was able to get his office to Skype in, and this is what he had to say. So the quality of the video is not awesome, but the message truly is. So let me make a few clicks here, and we'll hear from a business leader and what they mean when they say STEM. Let me make a few clicks here.
I was an early professional. The United States was #1 in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And in a recent survey and analysis by the World Economic Forum, they ranked the United States 52nd in the quality of mathematics and science education in the world, and 5th and declining in overall global competitiveness. Regarding the evolving careers, a typical scientist and engineer that I have in my organization today, they are great problem solvers. They have a problem, they break the problem down, they get rid of the dust, and they find the answer, and then they can act on that answer. Artistic or creative people, they can start with an idea, expand the idea, connect it in different ways, and go in multiple directions. A lot of the jobs that we're starting to see emerge today, such as data scientists, neuromorphic architecture, web archaeologists, nanocomposite engineer, cyberfractologists, biomimicry analysts, which will likely be some of the top jobs of the future, like many of the top jobs today didn't exist 5 years ago. They're going to require people who can do both, convergent thinking and divergent thinking. So the integration of multiple disciplines, be in position to obtain and succeed in dual degrees, be a psychological computer scientist, a medical mathematician, a sociological engineer. Those type of converging disciplines and having the left brain and the right brain be able to send signals back and forth, I think is something that I'm looking for from education.
So a couple different items there that Mr. Land shares resonate with me anytime that I hear his message. two that I'd like to highlight. The first one is when he talks about kind of the convergent and divergent thinking. So, convergent, and this is definitely very me. I'm a very convergent thinker. Whatever the problem is, I'm focused on the problem. I'm looking for the problem. When I find it, I can act on it, technologically or otherwise. Other personalities, though, or other personality types, kind of more the right-brained folks who can, come up with a new solution or multiple solutions. My wife is the absolute queen of this. I'll say my decision-making process is I'll come along to the first one that'll work, and there, that'll work, and I'm 40 yards that way, trying to get it done. And she's like, oh, but if you just would have, kept thinking about what some more options would be, so persons that have that creative thought process are really very highly desirable in STEM careers, because a lot of times we need options in solving some of these things. And certainly when you come to that first solution, it may not be the best one. The other thing that he talks about is some of those absolute harebrained, it doesn't even sound like reality, neuromorphic architecture. So what we mean there is, if you can Google this in your own time, but what I understand that to be is we're trying to get a computer to think like a human brain. Right? So when you follow kind of the neuron connections down through the brain and figure out how are we making connections, how are we doing things, there's a tremendous amount of artificial intelligence around autonomous vehicles and things like that are coming on, and ties loosely to what the lesson that Amanda and I did together. Teaching a computer to do that requires somebody that understands, some of the computer stuff and somebody that understands some of the biology stuff. So you've got kind of these evolving careers, these things that we don't even know what they're going to be. My iPhone blows my grandmother away. That couldn't possibly be a reality. Well, it's we're really close to Star Trek these days with our technology, and that's going to continue. So having students that are ready, teaching them how to think, not what to think, gets them ready for things that we don't know might exist in their future as opposed to our past. And we have to build on our past, but we got to get them ready for, what's not there yet.
To be more metacognitive.
Yeah.
So thinking about their thinking and getting them to a deeper level.
Exactly. So those are things I notice when Mr. Land addresses us. All right. So at this point, I kind of turn it over to Amanda. I'll probably be doing some clicks here, but we did a couple lessons together, and it's the Amanda Show. What do you got?
Right. Okay, so you will notice the more of a template lesson plan there that starts off with the industry problem, and that was lesson number 1. So that actually occurred last year. I taught 3rd grade last year, and then I looped up with the same group, and I'm teaching 4th grade this year. Yeah. So we were working out with earth science, and since I work with gifted and talented students, we wanted to push them and challenge them a little bit more. So we worked with using a UAV.
Let's tell them what that is.
So you see it right there in the industry under the industry problems. So the autonomous vehicle operator. Oh wait.
Yep. I'm gonna pull that lesson plan up full screen here in a minute. There we go.
Okay. So UAV, the correct term, or AKA drone.
Yeah.
So we used the drone, and the students had to observe weather conditions to see if they could fly the UAV.
Exactly.
And so you made some railroad connections of how drones are going to possibly be used in the future, how they... we're talking about even, FedEx, is that it?
Starting to be used now, yeah. Amazon, some of this stuff you guys may have seen in the news recently where, Amazon has proposed delivering these things, doing their delivery with an unmanned vehicle. Weather certainly is a thing that has to be addressed there. Then there's also, there's tremendous different applications. Farmers are using them. They're being used in construction management sites. They're being used to analyze volumes of gravel or sand that have been removed or have yet to be able to be removed from a mining site. They're being used for lots and lots of different applications. So we were looking at the weather side.
Yep. So the point of the lesson was to see how weather impacts the flight operation. And so you see there the STEM top, how it relates to each part of STEM, which I feel like that list could even go even more elaborate
Could
because
be longer.
it hit many across many domains there.
I would add too, just as we look at this, right here you'll notice kind of in the middle where it says art. So STEAM is another popular term, STEM or STEAM. For us at the ISD at least, when we talk about STEM, the artistic side is implicit in the engineering side. So if you're going to tell a story with data, if you're going to be a person that crunches the numbers and then puts them into a graph, you have to do a good job of telling that story graphically. So you got to choose the correct colors that will make sense and get that idea across. Additionally, if you're designing a product, people won't purchase a thing from you that doesn't have an aesthetic appeal to it, right? It has to have those qualities. So for us at least, the artistic side is embedded in the engineering side, but we add that here to kind of the lesson plan just to acknowledge that it's part of the lesson.
Yep. And so students had to compile a weather report, the current conditions to see if they were even able to fly the drone that day.
Right. Which we use, what do we use for weather?
We use the Kent County Airport, their weather conditions.
Yeah, we pulled up the weather online, real live time weather. Like if I'm going to go flying, we had the students look that up.
Right. And since this was challenging the students, I set some background information with a lot of vocabulary words. And you see the vocabulary words that we use there. So I did some lessons before Avery came, so the students had some background knowledge. So then when he showed up, right away, all students are excited and engaged when they see the UAV, that they can see it fly and touch it. And so engagement was immediately there. And then
See if I go make a couple clicks here to kind of go back. There we go.
So then you brought them through the weather course.
Yeah. If we scroll, so that link that I'd shared kind of in the chat area, it's to the AOPA. These are screen grabs of that information. So we were really analyzing weather. AOPA is when I teach somebody to fly an airplane at the college level, they have very good, well laid out, free. You can make an account and utilize this stuff. Please do. They love more involvement. They make good online content to explain this stuff, because when you're flying, whether it's a drone or a real airplane, or even if you're driving or work in transportation anywhere, weather's a major factor. So understanding it at a deep level is assistive, at least, and safety oriented when the stakes are higher. So we talked about source regions. We explained moisture, air density, how that changes the local, not just geography, but the local weather, and then the local climate being different from weather, and helping the students understand that. So temperature of the air.
Right, because students are just used to saying it's sunny, it's cloudy, it's hot, it's cold.
Right.
So this brought it to a deeper level for them to understand why is it sunny, why is it cold, why,
Exactly. So we kind of stepped through that training, and that was lesson 1, which you see here kind of on the left side of the screen.
Right.
So that was really that was in your weather unit.
Correct. And we ended up doing that over 2 days.
Yep.
Because they found out that they weren't able to fly it the first day, which
That's right.
they were really bummed. But he came back
Yeah.
a couple days later
Yeah.
and made it happen.
Having the students at the end of that lesson, their job, once we kind of taught them about weather and where to go and get, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration real data online. And those links are in the lesson plan, so if you want to do this, go ahead and do it. They had to make a decision based on it. So exercising that, kind of that convergent idea of, all right, we've got these different criteria, we've got these different constraints, here's our data, we've recorded our data on this sheet, can we do it or can't we? And they made the choice. And then we made them explain why they made that choice. And I think, was it precipitation or wind that day? I don't remember.
It was precipitation.
Now. Precipitation.
I think it actually was a little bit of wind too, but it was definitely the precipitation.
So we couldn't fly the drone in the rain, is what that boils down to.
So they got to, let's evolve on that. He came back, and then the students were able to program the drone to fly, which you will see in a later slide. There's a picture of them doing that. They still talk about that today.
Really? Seriously?
Yeah. That was
funny.
That was one of their highlights of that lesson. So then moving on to lesson 2, which you see is a very brief outline, purposely because of the template, I had to fit it onto the screen. So I wanted to at least give you a general idea, and we can put it into the full template for you. So this year, back in October, we were working on ecosystems in 4th grade. So again, I've looped up with the kids, so now I'm in 4th grade with them. And you see there, the driving question is, can we use the UAV to get a sense of the discovery zone, which is a field behind our school, to identify local geographic features that may impact the ecosystem. So they had to take a look at a couple different things. And so Avery came in and just first off gave them an idea of how the drone worked. So last year, yes, they had to do the weather conditions, but now they got a little deeper of, how does this work? How do they use the satellites to collect, the images? And
sure.
So it went a little deeper with just generally the technology of the UAV. And then reviewed what they had learned with ecosystems. And so he took many different aspects of the curriculum, what we do for learning the affixes in our word study.
Oh, prefixes and suffixes.
Prefixes and suffixes.
That's right.
So you would think this is a science lesson using STEM. How did you get prefixes and suffixes in this? And so it was a great connection he talks about telemetry.
Yep.
And so, my students have that knowledge of the basics. Okay, what do I know of those parts of the words? And then they were able to figure out what that word meant. And then
with telemetry is one of the, just a quick side note, it's one of the devices on the UAV that I make them break that word apart. It's tele and metry, right? So when we say tele, what do we mean? And they're like, and I give them options, right? Telephone, television, telescope. What do we mean when we say tele? And they come up with it, right? We got something over there, and we're going to bring it over here. And then, okay, what's metry or metric or meter? And, after a couple minutes of letting the thinking be in the room, they come up with, well, it's a measurement. Okay, so now what is telemetry. Well, we've got measurements that are happening over there, and we're going to send them over here. And that's how the drone works. It's making measurements, flight measurements, how high am I, how fast am I, how far am I from the next GPS point, and it sends them back to the real-time data screen that we have on the ground. Mm-hmm. So it's neat to watch them arrive at that connection.
Yeah. So I'm just talking about basically what they were going to see. Like, what did we want them to look for in the discovery zone when it came to the geographic features and how that was going to impact.
Do you want me to share some of the pictures? I can pull up. So just keep talking about what we were trying, and I'll make some clicks here.
So then we went outside, and again, you'll see the kids hands-on with the UAV. That's a really expensive piece of equipment, but they love that they were able to interact with it. So they watched it fly. This time they did not program it because they were able to do that last year. So we flew over the discovery zone, and that's what you're seeing in these pictures here. And then the students came back, and we had a discussion about, well, what do you see in these pictures? And Avery can elaborate on specifically even this one, on what we were talking about.
So when we're looking at this photograph here, and hopefully my screen sharing is working so you can see it, but right over here they've got these two big white chunks of, I can't remember what they are right now.
They ended up being logs.
Okay, so that was one thing. We're like, well, are those logs or are they big cement, culvert pieces? And they weren't sure. So that was something that Amanda worked with them more on later. But what we did notice, if you look on kind of the north side here, both of them have an area that is more shady, right? So it's more shady over here. So then using what had become common language for them in terms of biome or microbiome and biotic and abiotic features. Habitats, exactly. So we said, well, if it's more shady over here, what are we likely to have? And they said, well, it'll be more moisture. And I said, why? Well, because there's less evaporation. Well, what's that? And we were able to loop that back into kind of the weather phenomena and weather lessons that we talked about. So they were producing understanding of what was likely to be here through a simple, well, maybe not so simple, but a remote sensing device where we say, okay, so it's more shady over here. Probably for several hours it's more shady, so there will be fungi and there will be, maybe some moss growing. Okay, well, what would it be like on the other side of the log? Well, it would be more sunny, the plants would be taller, things like that. So, as we loop through several of these, you can see in the drone's making a turn here, so it turns around and flies the other way. And we were just analyzing different pieces of this. Well, there's taller plants here. Well, what does that mean? Well, if there are taller plants, then they're going to need a certain kind of moisture. And this was October, so nothing was flowering. But you see these big yellow dots on some of these photos. So they got these big yellow dots, and they're like, "Oh, those are flowers." I said, "Really? In October? You think they're flowers?" And they're like, "Oh," and that was 5 minutes worth of discussion. Well, what could it be? It turned out it was a large, some type of plant you guys have back there that it keeps its leaves as a large plant, but the leaves change color. So they're making assessments of or judgment calls about, well, if we're looking for a certain type of habitat for an animal, where might we look? Well, what do they need? And we were talking about, they produced the knowledge of what an animal or a plant needs to make it. They gotta have food, they gotta have water, and they gotta have shelter, and where might we find those things if we're going to, go out and do field research. So that was some of the discussion on the photograph. So I'll click us back to our regular webinar here in a minute. There we go. So yeah, those were some of the things that they were stepping through in analyzing that information.
So after we analyzed the photos, I had the students that day reflect on what they observed, and then they had to make predictions on what they would see. So the next day, we went on a nature walk, and we went down into the Discovery Zone and walked through that field and decided whether or not our observations were correct. Made some new discoveries. They saw the different type of wildlife and why is the grass all imprinted here? What could have been there? And so we looked very closely. So we had a perspective from like a bird's eye view, and then we came down and were right at ground level and comparing our notes. So from there it was just kind of an informal assessment of what they observed. And then you see there, this was after the day one. So today we flew the UAV. I apologize if you have a hard time reading the fourth grade writing. I tried to pick one that was legible.
That's what my writing was.
So they flew the UAV over the field behind the school. We were looking for signs of an ecosystem. She had predicted that was a storm drain, the big white.
Oh yeah.
So that was her prediction, that it was a storm drain. Is a sign of a low area and a shadow.
Is an indicator of where the sun is.
Okay. Green vegetation. So they were also looking for like dark green versus the light green.
That's right. I remember that.
And where there might be water, a source of water for plants and animals. And then a sign of a water source.
Yep.
And
saw what looks like flowers, but believe it to be yellow leaves. That was the plan.
5-minute discussion. Yeah.
Right.
And so that was day one. And so then they had to take what they learned on the nature walk and then do another writing of the comparison of what they thought and then compared to what actually was. So it was not a storm drain. They were big logs.
All right. So what you're looking at here, and Amanda, maybe you talk some more about these because I don't remember which one was day 1 and day 2.
Yep.
But
So this was lesson 2 that you see right here. So this one in the middle was the beginning when Avery was talking about just how the drone works.
telemetry, I think.
Yes, yep. And then you actually see the students hands-on. You know, they were very involved with the process of flying the UAV.
And that's one of the things I try and explain to folks. You know, that device is grant funded. It was given to us at the ISD because they know we can work with lots of different schools and make it available to lots of folks. So its job in life is to give its life so that your students can learn things. So I'm like, here, you take this, hold it like this, and carry it outside. And they're like, oh my God, I'm carrying a drone. So, you know, program it, and I double check it and make sure it's, you know, not going to crash and do something weird, but it's theirs.
Yep. They enjoyed it. So this was, and then you see the group picture of us outside. You can actually see the field, but you saw the pictures from that. This was actually from last year. So you see the group of us outside. They're all
waving.
That was the very first time they saw it, so they were so excited to see it flying. And in the middle is where they're programming it. So we kind of split the group in half so that each, you know, everyone got to be involved with the programming. Right. You know, my students had been involved with Hour of Code, and so this was a great connection for them to just see it in real life, you know, not just the little games, Frozen and, you know, but Angry Birds, so they got to actually do the programming, and then you see the takeoff of the UAV.
Teacher perceptions.
Yes.
What were your thoughts as we were stepping through and doing this work together? What went great? What would you change, etc.?
So we'll rewind to the first lesson. The first lesson last year, again, engagement immediately. So even though it was a really challenging concept for them, yes, they were working with earth science and erosion and the typical things like that, but this brought them to a whole nother level. So it was difficult information, but the engagement was there. I mean, to be able to bring that technology into the classroom, you know, a lot of people can purchase a drone, but it's not a common thing that everyone has right now. And so to bring that in and see it, use it, they loved it. The first year, it kind of ended up being really long. Yeah. So the lesson, because we had so much to do with the weather course, and then doing the actual weather conditions, the local weather conditions, it ended up being a little long for third graders to sit through that. So I would have separated that into a couple days. But, you know, one thing that you would need too is the software to be able to program it.
That's actually a free program that's downloadable, but it works with certain types of devices. So you can get the programming software for free, but then what would you program? Well, you can write the different programs. It's called Mission Planner if you have any interest in that. So just Google Mission Planner drone software and you'll find it. It's free to download. Free drone programming software. Yes, free.
Yes. So once you get the drone, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Or contact Avery. So that was great. I would do it over 2 days. Yeah. But it was
the weather topic got a little thick.
Well, and it was, you know, but it was necessary. So you know, they needed to understand that in order to even do understand the weather conditions if it was good to fly.
Sure.
So, and then for the second lesson, I thought was perfect. The connections were right on target, and it was it took about an hour. So. Yeah. You know, to be able to, I mean, they were up and moving too, you know, so yes, there's the focus lesson, but the focus lesson was maybe 20 minutes. Yeah. We went outside, we did, you know, we flew it, came back, had the discussion, they did their writing. I did the nature walk on day 2. If I were to do it again, I'd kind of like to do the nature walk right away, so it's fresh in their mind. Yes, we had the photos, but they were eager to get to it, to really see if they were, you know, ready. Yeah. And really get into it, and you know.
Let me ask you a question about that. Did you notice? So we'd done kind of the discussion of the technology and gathered some aerial data and analyzed it day one. I was kind of curious, when they went out day two, did they remember the photos that we had taken and some of the spots on those photos that we were looking at and say, okay, if I look over, it was kind of in that corner of the field. If I look by that big log on this side, I should see, or if I look on that side, I should see. Did they do some of that correlative?
Well, that was the thing of why I would have loved to do it on the same day.
Oh, yeah.
Because those were such great discussions about the yellow, where the yellow flowers, where that even though they knew that from the day before, but it wasn't fresh in their mind. So they did say, oh, look, no, those aren't storm drains. Those are big logs. Oh, and they got into it, but I don't feel like they got close enough to okay, let's look at the shadowy side of this log and really look at that. So just making that connection.
Yeah, okay.
On the same day, I think would have been just a little bit
Yeah.
richer for them. So where are we at here?
Let's see. Some of the teacher perceptions.
Yep.
More teacher perceptions.
Yep. So the takeaways. I mean, I think I already hit on those. The
Sure.
first lesson, I said spend a little more time on the weather PowerPoint.
Give it more time instead of as dense as it was.
And maybe actually even do that before you got there.
Yeah.
Because at the time it was new. So but we already hit on the vocab words. That then doing another lesson on that, and then maybe doing a brief summary with you coming in, and then doing the weather evaluation to fly it. But definitely separating that out a little bit more, because that was third grade and they needed that
Yeah.
more wiggle time there. But really lesson 2, like I said, maybe immediately do the nature walk. Because I don't feel like they were just sitting in the classroom for so long. If we were up and moving right away after that, they went to recess when you came.
That's
So
right.
that was,
That's right.
and then I went into something else after recess. But I would have brought them right back in, gone right out into the nature walk to connect that.
I'm going to ask a kind of a probing question on that point too. Are there some features of this lesson or things that stand out in your mind that you'd like to have be parts of other either science lessons or math lessons or English lessons or history lessons that you teach in your classroom? We approached it this way. I like that approach. I think it might work in this other topic area.
Well, I mean, math for sure. So here we're collecting all this data.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about making it into a presentation. That is something that they need to be able to do. Now,
Yeah.
I think it's more of a 5th grade where they actually have to construct, more of a graph and show all their data. But with my students being, in that gifted and talented, I feel like I could push them to do that.
Okay, yeah.
But the math connections, I think could elaborate even more.
So if we're taking, real world, and I shouldn't even do air quotes, that doesn't get any more real world than flying a drone around and getting your own data from behind your school. But so you get that real world data and then turning that into a presentation about what you suspect as a field scientist, if they're wearing their, their little field scientist hat, and say, I predict whatever it is based on this data that we have. So we look at this, some of the new SAT information and how the students are going to be assessed. That's what they're looking to have them do, is kind of look at this information over here and then convergent thought again, kind of, okay, so what can you do with that knowledge? Well, if I were planting plants back there, I would plant them here and not there because everything's really tall and it's really wet, and the seeds would drown if I put them there. Or based on this information, this is my claim, and then my evidence would be this, and then the reasoning. So maybe kind of moving them towards that.
Yes.
Come up with a set of thoughts related to the
Would they
information.
apply the knowledge that they gathered?
Yeah.
And show it.
Okay. Good. I think we skipped over it, but did you talk about student perceptions? We might have missed it back here.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
All right,
there we go.
yep.
We got our slides out of order. All right, student perceptions.
Yes.
How did your students?
So again, I highlighted right at the beginning. Both lessons completely engaged from beginning to end. There was all students do. So in lesson 1, their highlight was definitely programming it.
Yeah.
Programming the UAV for the flight. And then they were very surprised at how much the weather affected the ability to fly it. Because it really wasn't raining that hard that day, but it was enough that we couldn't fly it.
Yeah.
And so you see the quotes. Drones are really cool. I liked that it was hands-on. We know that. We know that all students prefer to really dive in and be able to do it. So the fact that they could program it, they could touch it, they could see it moving. That it was they loved every minute of it. Lesson 2. With the ecosystems, they loved that they could see the ecosystems from a different perspective. So yes, we can go outside and take a nature walk and look, but to be able to see it from above and then compare the notes, they enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And then some of the quotes that came from the kids, I liked how it was so interactive. I liked that we could compare the photos from the drone to our nature walk. It was fun to guess what habitats were shown in the picture and then see it up close to confirm whether or not they were right.
Yeah.
Again, we did that, but I feel like we could have gone even deeper with that, really kind of gotten our hands dirty, and looked at that.
Which goes back to your point of, if we'd have done kind of structured just the timing of some of this where, okay, we got enough time to talk about the technology, and then we got some time to talk about the science behind kind of remote sensing, and then what does that mean for your unit on ecosystems, and then go outside and walk the space after having programmed a drone flight over it and gathered some of that aerial data. Okay, so now what? If we'd have just set it up so they could do that right after, your thinking was, hey, that would lead to some of that deeper investigative thought. As opposed to having it separated by, a recess and then go home and then sleep and then come back the next morning and start working on that with you afterwards. Okay. So the student perceptions, and again, I apologize, our slides were out of order, but we'll just come back down here, teacher perceptions. So we're most of the way through it now, folks. I would like to invite you to our next webinar. Is going to be February 16th, 2016, and I don't quite have my commitment from my teacher for next month, but the plan is to have it be on design thinking, and that will be, we hope, a high school educator locally that has done some work with us. So join us again February 16th. We are going to take, I noticed a couple questions popping up in here, so let's just take a peek at those. First one is, I am not going to try and say that name, but the question is, when the students completed the lesson, did they have questions that came up that led them to additional investigations? So what would you comment on that?
I'm assuming that's for lesson 2?
Either way, I think that might be my guess.
Yeah. We had the additional questions, I think, was more from the observations of the aerial photos that then they wanted to look into when we got into the nature walk. I would say after that, I don't recall. That's probably something I could have asked.
Yeah.
Just to get into
further
discussion.
Prompt some of that thinking.
Yeah,
but it does kind of come up in what we were saying in the timing of this. If we may do this lesson some more, but if you have that where they program the thing, they go out, they get their own data, and then they go and do their nature walk right after that. One of the ways that this is actually used by real field biologists, one guy locally that my company gets to work with, he'll go out and he'll do a scan, and that tells him where to go to make his up closer visual observations of stuff.
Yep, they knew they wanted to go to those storm drains,
the logs.
They knew they wanted to go there, and so they sat on them. They were right there. But yeah, I think it was just more from the aerial photos that was leading them to additional, questions that they might have to investigate. But beyond that, we didn't go further from that.
Okay. So that was the only question. Let me just scan this really quick. If anybody has any more questions, please go ahead and type them in. Looks like Kim's typing something right now. Kim, please state your district. So I'll just give Kim a moment. As we think about kind of that integration of science and technology and engineering and mathematics, I liked what you had mentioned, Amanda, about just, how do we take some of our math content and apply it to some of this type of stuff. So, as you've thought about that, if you have, and you could probably even use the data from last year and have your students build some graphs around it, because one of the benefits of using this kind of technology is you can go on Google Earth and look at things, but usually those photos are a couple years old. Yeah. In this case, it was, we've made our own ortho mosaic out of photos we took yesterday. So, but you could use them again this year. It's still not that old. What would that look like if you were going to draw out some of that math content? What might you have them graph, chart, record?
Well, they could record the different plant and animal species that they discovered when they actually got into the nature walk.
Yeah.
So they could record that data. And then, so we also did the weather one. Let's see.
As I think about that second lesson that we were talking about biomes and that, one of the things that sometimes we can forget when we really are doing this stuff, you go out and you can count how many of a certain plant type you see in a space, and then
tally that up.
Yep, you add that up, and then you can look at that whole space. So you're looking at the whole space. You say, okay, we were surveying, I forget what the software told us, something like 4 acres, that little patch behind your school. So we got this 4-acre space. In that space, we've got 14 of these, but they're mostly over here. And then we've got 3 of these types of trees, and most of this is grass. So you can start to look at it from a graphical perspective, kind of as a fraction. So you've got
which that's what we're finishing up right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, kids, you're doing fractions.
Yeah.
So you get you have them relate that information and turn it into a fraction and start to graph that out. Looks like we did get another question. I wasn't aware that there are STEM consultants at the ISD. There are. Hello.
Use them.
How do we contact you? Our school is very interested in becoming more of a STEM school. Okay, so I'm going to scroll forward then to answer that. No, I don't have it back here. I used to. Okay, so I will type in this URL. It is bit.ly/STEM-KISD. There you go. If you put that into your web browser, www in front of it, but that'll put you in touch with Rick and myself. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us in the Career Readiness Department. So Career Readiness at Kent ISD. The superintendents in Kent County have established all students college and career ready is one of their goals. I think that's goal number 3. Hope none of them are watching. It might be 5. I think it's 3. All students college and career ready by the time they graduate from high school. So again, that goes back to that video we played of Hayden Land at the beginning of what's coming, what kind of careers are they going to be faced with. So there's myself and Rick. We're STEM consultants. Rick's background is in engineering, and he does 3D printing. So your students have access to a 3D printer, just like they have access to this unmanned vehicle.
Which our school did. We had Rick come in for that.
Rick came out and did some of that work with you guys. Also, there is a gentleman named Eric Kelleher, and Eric actually I think is in here. So Eric, if you want to post something there, but he's our career readiness consultant. So looks like he's typing, but in short, Eric will work more on kind of the soft skills with your students and say, look, here's what it's like to sit in an interview. Here's how to write a resume. Here's how to present yourself professionally, speaking, listening, all of those types of things that we're trying to get our students to do. So he works with your students on that. And then we also, and this is really exciting to me, we have 3 career exploration coordinators. So our career exploration coordinators work with local businesses, similar to kind of what we do, but in a different capacity. So they've got these, they're lined up with the different segments that have been identified locally as high growth areas. Yes. So we've got computing and IT. We've got, her name is Lindsay. Lindsay, whose last name escapes me right now. Lindsay Tilley, thank you. I hope you don't see this, Lindsay. Lindsay Tilley, she works in computing, and then Amy Pierce. Amy Pierce works in engineering and advanced manufacturing as well as construction. And then Krista Harmon works in the healthcare field. So those are some very high growth areas just right here kind of locally in Kent County and the 2 or 3 counties around here. So those folks do 2 things basically. Your kids can go to businesses and see things, see real careers and what it's like to live and operate in those careers. And then they also work with those folks to bring them into your classroom to talk to them about, hey, here's what it's like. Here's a reason to learn fractions. Here's a reason to work with decimals and that kind of work. So that's us at Career Readiness here at Kent ISD. So, find us, get a hold of us, and we're happy to work with you.
Truly email them and tell them what type of unit you're working on. So that's what has happened the last couple of years. Like, here's what's going on in science. And so right away you're like, I got some ideas. And just right away, things that I wouldn't think of or have necessarily the resources to do, like the UAV. And then, for instance, my teaching partner got a hold of him and said, we're working on fractions. So he came in and they did a unit on fractions.
Yeah.
And then part of the
Joe.
part of the fifth grade team, like we had mentioned earlier, got in contact with Rick to bring in the programming and doing the 3D printer. And so truly, you have a unit that you want just more additional resources. Email them, get in contact with them. They have a lot of ideas.
We're around. So I'm going to play this video really quick. This would be an example of, remember we talked at the beginning about application versus relevance. So it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's funny if you might recognize this Family Guy. So I'm just going to play this really fast if I can. Is it going to work? This link might be broken. Oh no, hang on. There we go. So in that video, he talks about two roads, one parallel and one perpendicular, and he's giving directions to the character, and he's saying, hey, if you go down here, you find two roads, one parallel, one perpendicular, solve for x, and that's how he's giving the directions. So I'm sorry that the link wasn't playing the audio on your side, but that would be an example of application, yes, trigonometry and parallel, perpendicular, but not relevant because nobody's giving directions that way. We're all the way to the end, though, for now. STEM in the classroom. Again, please join us next month, and thanks for your attention. Have a great night. Bye-bye.